The phone call came on a rainy Tuesday morning in March. Maya Richardson was sitting in her small Atlanta apartment, drinking coffee and reviewing logistics reports for the shipping company where she worked. When her aunt's voice crackled through the speaker, Maya could barely understand the words through the tears. "She's gone, honey. Grandma Della passed peacefully in her sleep last night." Maya set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. At 92, her grandmother had lived a full life, but Maya wasn't ready to say goodbye. Della Richardson had been more than a grandmother to Maya. She had been a mentor, a friend and the strongest person Maya had ever known. Growing up, Maya spent every summer at her grandmother's farm in rural Georgia. Those were the best days of her childhood. She would wake up before sunrise to help collect eggs from the chickens, learn to identify different vegetables in the garden, and listen to stories about their family history while shelling peas on the front porch. Della had bought the land back in 1952 with money she saved working as a seamstress. It wasn't easy for a black woman to purchase property in that part of Georgia during those times, but Della was determined. She wanted to create something lasting for her family. Over the years, she built a thriving organic farm that supplied vegetables to stores across 3 counties. Maya wiped her eyes and focused on her aunt's voice. There was something else, something about the will. "Maya, honey, you need to come down here. Grandma left the farm to you." The words hit Maya like lightning. She had always assumed the property would go to her father or one of her uncles. She was only 34 years old and lived in the city. What did she know about running a farm? But as the days passed and Maya drove down for the funeral, memories came flooding back. She remembered the pride in her grandmother's eyes when Maya successfully grew her first tomato plant at age 8. She remembered Della teaching her about crop rotation, soil health, and the importance of treating the land with respect. "This farm isn't just dirt and plants," Della used to say while they walked through the fields. "It's our legacy. It's proof that we belong here, that we can build something beautiful and lasting." Maya's 10-year-old daughter, Zoe, and her 8-year-old son, Tyler, had never spent much time on the farm. They were city kids who preferred video games to vegetable gardens. But something magical happened when they saw their great-grandmother's property for the first time in years. Zoe ran through the abandoned chicken coop, imagination already transforming it into a palace for the chickens they would raise. Tyler discovered an old tire swing hanging from a massive oak tree and spent hours pushing it higher and higher. For the first time in months, Maya saw her children playing outside without being asked. Maya's marriage had ended 2 years earlier, and she had been struggling to make ends meet as a single mother. The divorce settlement was fair, but Atlanta was expensive. She worked long hours at the logistics company, and the kids spent most afternoons in aftercare programs. They all felt cramped in their small apartment, but Maya couldn't afford anything bigger. Standing in her grandmother's kitchen, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, lighting up dust particles that danced in the air. The house smelled like the lavender Della had always grown in pots on the windowsill. Maya's father tried to talk her out of it when she mentioned considering the move. "Maya, that area hasn't changed much since your grandmother's time," he warned during a phone call. "People there have long memories and old attitudes. It's not like Atlanta. You'll be isolated out there with the kids." Her friends thought she was crazy too. Why would she leave a steady job and move to the middle of nowhere? Maya had spent 4 years in the Army after high school, working in logistics and supply chain management. She had a good career path in Atlanta and connections in the business world. But Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this was meant to be. She had always felt disconnected from her roots, caught between the urban world where she built her career and the rural heritage that shaped her grandmother's strength. During that first week visiting the farm, Maya walked every inch of the 150 acres. Much of it had been leased to neighboring farmers after Della became too old to work it herself. The main house needed repairs, but the bones were solid. The old barn had good potential for storage and maybe even a farm stand. Maya researched organic farming programs and discovered grants available for beginning farmers, especially women and minorities. The more she learned, the more excited she became. There was a growing market for locally grown organic produce. Food trucks and farm-to-table restaurants in nearby towns were looking for reliable suppliers. She calculated and recalculated the numbers. If she sold her small apartment in Atlanta and used the equity as startup money, she could make this work. It would be tight for the first few years. But Maya was used to tight budgets. The decision became clear during her last evening at the farm before returning to Atlanta. Maya sat on the front porch where she had shelled so many peas with her grandmother, watching Zoe and Tyler chase fireflies in the yard. Their laughter echoed across the fields as the sun set behind the tree line. "Mom, can we really live here?" Zoe asked, breathless from running. Maya looked at her daughter's dirt-stained dress and Tyler's grass-stained knees. These were the same fields where she had played as a child, where her grandmother had dreamed of creating something lasting. "Yes, baby, I think we can." The next month was a whirlwind of preparations. Maya gave notice at her job, sold her apartment, and enrolled the kids in the local school district. Her colleagues thought she was having a midlife crisis. Her mother worried about the isolation. Her father continued warning her about the challenges she would face, but Maya felt more certain with each passing day. This wasn't just about farming. It was about honoring her grandmother's legacy, showing her children where they came from, and proving to herself that she could build something meaningful. The moving truck arrived on a bright Saturday morning in May. As Maya watched the movers unload boxes into her grandmother's house, she felt Della's presence everywhere. In the kitchen where countless family meals had been prepared, in the garden where vegetables had fed 3 generations, in the fields where dreams had taken root and grown into reality, Maya Richardson was home. Maya's first morning on the farm started before sunrise. She woke to the sound of birds singing outside her bedroom window, something she hadn't heard in years of city living. The fresh air felt different here, cleaner somehow. She made coffee in her grandmother's old percolator and stepped onto the front porch to watch the sun come up over the fields. Everything seemed perfect until she noticed the problem. Her mailbox, which had been standing straight the day before, was now tilted at an odd angle. The wooden post looked like someone had tried to knock it over but hadn't quite succeeded. Maya walked closer and saw tire tracks in the soft dirt nearby. Deep tracks like someone had spun their wheels on purpose. Kids being kids, she told herself, though something in her stomach didn't feel right about it. Maya spent the next few days getting settled and meeting her neighbors. Most people were polite enough when she introduced herself at the local hardware store or grocery market, but she noticed the conversations that stopped when she walked by, the stares that lingered a little too long, the forced smiles that didn't quite reach people's eyes. The first real sign of trouble came during her second week. Maya was working in the garden early in the morning when she heard truck engines getting louder and louder. 2 pickup trucks came racing down her driveway, music blasting and engines revving. They circled around her yard twice before speeding off, leaving deep ruts in the grass and a cloud of dust hanging in the air. Maya's hands shook as she called the county sheriff's office. The dispatcher sounded bored when Maya explained what happened. "Did they threaten you directly?" the woman asked. "Well, no, but did they damage any property?" Maya looked at the tire tracks in her yard. "They tore up my grass and, ma'am, that's not really criminal damage. Boys will be boys, you know. They were probably just curious about the new neighbor." Maya hung up feeling frustrated and unsettled. This didn't feel like curiosity. It felt like intimidation. Over the next few weeks, the incidents multiplied. Someone cut her fence line in 3 places, allowing her neighbor's cattle to wander onto her property and trample her newly planted vegetable beds. When Maya called Bill Henderson, the neighbor who owned the cows, he acted surprised and apologetic. "Gosh, Maya, I'm real sorry about that. Don't know how they got through the fence. Must have been weak wire." But Maya had checked that fence line herself just days before. The wire had been cut cleanly, not broken from age or weather. Her irrigation system started having problems too. The main line that fed water to her crops developed mysterious leaks that appeared overnight. Maya would fix one section, only to find another break the next day. Each repair cost money she couldn't afford to waste, and each delay meant her plants suffered. The local hardware store seemed to be running out of the supplies she needed right when she needed them. Fence wire, irrigation fittings, even basic tools became mysteriously unavailable whenever Maya tried to purchase them. The owner, a thin man named Carl with suspicious eyes, would shrug and sug. "Just you try the next town over. Supply chain problems," he would say. "You know how it is." But Maya did know about supply chains from her logistics background. She also noticed that other customers never seemed to have trouble finding what they needed. The psychological pressure was the worst part. Maya would find dead animals on her doorstep in the morning. A raccoon one day, a possum the next. always arranged carefully, not like roadkill that had been accidentally left there. When she called the sheriff's office again, Deputy Rick Caldwell came out to take a report. Caldwell was a large man with a badge that looked too small on his broad chest. He walked around Maya's property with an attitude that suggested he was doing her a big favor by showing up at all. "Could be coyotes dragging these animals here," he said, kicking at the dead raccoon with the toe of his boot. "They do that sometimes." "Deputy, coyotes don't arrange dead animals neatly on people's front steps," Maya replied, trying to keep her voice calm. "You'd be surprised what wild animals do, ma'am." I wouldn't worry too much about it, but Maya was worrying. Her children had started asking questions about why their mom seemed stressed all the time. Why did they have to check the yard for surprises before going outside to play? Why did Maya insist on walking them to and from the school bus stop instead of letting them go alone like the other kids? Zoe, her 10-year-old, was smart enough to sense the tension even when Maya tried to hide it. One evening while they were making dinner together, Zoe asked quietly, "Mom, do the people here not like us because we're black?" Maya's heart broke a little. She had hoped to shield her children from this reality for as long as possible, but Zoe had noticed the cold stares in town. She had heard the conversations that stopped when their family walked by. "Some people need time to get used to change, sweetheart," Maya said carefully, "but that's their problem, not ours. We belong here just as much as anyone else." Tyler, her 8-year-old, was having nightmares about monsters in the barn. Maya suspected the monsters were really the fears he picked up from the tension around him. The harassment escalated after Maya's first month on the farm. Someone spray-painted ugly words on the side of her barn during the night. When Maya saw the graffiti in the morning, she felt sick to her stomach. She took pictures before painting over it, but the words seemed burned into her memory. Her grandmother's old truck, which Maya had been using around the property, developed 4 flat tires overnight. All 4 had been slashed cleanly with a knife. The cost of replacement tires took a big bite out of Maya's tight budget. Maya started documenting everything. She bought a cheap security camera and set it up to watch her driveway. She kept a journal of every incident, every threat, every act of vandalism. When she called the sheriff's office, she made sure to get incident report numbers, even though she suspected the reports were being filed in someone's trash can. The breaking point came 6 weeks after Maya moved to the farm. She was working late in the barn, trying to repair some equipment when she heard voices outside. Male voices talking low but getting closer. Maya turned off her work light and crept to the barn window. In the moonlight, she could see 3 men walking around her property, pointing at different buildings and talking among themselves. One of them had something in his hand that looked like a crowbar. Maya's phone was in the house 50 yards away across an open yard. She crouched in the dark barn, heart pounding, listening to the men discuss her farm like they owned it. "This used to be good land, before old Della got too sick to work it," one voice said. "Could be good again with the right people running it," another replied. "New girl's not gonna last long anyway. City folks never do." Maya held her breath and waited. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, the men walked back toward the road. She heard truck doors slam and an engine start up. When Maya finally made it back to the house, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely dial 911. This time, the dispatcher connected her to Deputy Caldwell directly. "Ma'am, did you actually see these men damage anything?" Caldwell asked. "They were trespassing on my property with what looked like tools. But no actual vandalism occurred tonight? Deputy, they were clearly planning something. This has been going on for weeks. I'll send a car by to check the area. But without witnesses or actual damage, there's not much we can do." Maya realized she was on her own. Whatever was happening here, the local law enforcement wasn't going to help her. In fact, she was starting to suspect they might be part of the problem. That night, Maya lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if her father had been right. Maybe she had made a terrible mistake bringing her children to this place. Maybe some battles weren't worth fighting. But as the sun came up over her grandmother's fields, Maya felt her resolve strengthen. Della Richardson hadn't given up when times got tough. She had built something beautiful and lasting on this land despite all the obstacles she faced. Maya wasn't going to give up either, but she was going to need help. 3 months into her new life on the farm, Maya was starting to wonder if she was losing her mind. The incidents kept happening, but they were always just small enough, just vague enough, that they could be explained away as coincidence or bad luck. Her crops were failing despite everything she did right. Plants that should have been thriving in the Georgia summer heat were withering and dying. Maya tested the soil, adjusted the irrigation, even consulted with agricultural extension agents. Nothing helped. It wasn't until she found the small holes in her irrigation lines that she realized someone was sabotaging her water system. The holes were tiny, barely visible, drilled with precision to look like normal wear and tear. But Maya's military training had taught her to notice details. These weren't random failures. Someone was systematically destroying her farm from the inside out. Maya's security camera had been broken twice, both times in ways that looked accidental. A tree branch had fallen on it during a storm that barely moved other trees in the area. Then someone had accidentally hit it with a baseball while playing catch nearby, according to a note left on her door. The local bank started giving her trouble about her farm loan. Suddenly, her credit wasn't good enough for the equipment financing she had been pre-approved for just weeks earlier. The loan officer, a nervous man who wouldn't make eye contact, mumbled something about policy changes and risk assessment updates. Maya's children were struggling too. Zoe came home from school with stories about kids who wouldn't sit with her at lunch or invite her to birthday parties. Tyler got in his first ever playground fight when an older boy called him names that Maya had hoped her son would never hear. But Maya pushed forward. She had to. This farm represented everything her grandmother had worked for, everything Maya wanted to build for her children. She wouldn't let a few small-minded bullies drive her away from her family's legacy. Then came the Friday evening that changed everything. Maya had sent Zoe and Tyler to stay with their father in Atlanta for the weekend. She wanted to spend time working on the farm without worrying about the kids, and honestly, she needed a break from the constant stress of protecting them from the ugliness around them. Maya was in her vegetable garden as the sun started to set, trying to save what remained of her tomato plants. The work was frustrating and heartbreaking. These plants should have been producing bushels of fruit by now. Instead, they were stunted and struggling, victims of the ongoing sabotage to her water system. She was so focused on her work that she didn't hear the vehicles approaching until they were already in her driveway. 2 pickup trucks, engines rumbling loud in the evening quiet. Maya looked up from her garden and felt her stomach drop. She recognized one of the trucks from previous drive-bys. This time they weren't just driving through. The trucks parked near her front porch and 6 men climbed out. Maya's mouth went dry as she saw that several of them were carrying rifles. Hunting rifles, the kind used for deer season, but pointed toward the ground in a way that was clearly meant to be seen and understood. The men spread out across Maya's yard in a formation that blocked her path to the house. Maya stood slowly, dirt still on her hands, trying to project calm while her heart hammered against her ribs. "Evening, Miss Richardson," called the tallest man, who seemed to be their leader. Maya recognized him from the hardware store. She thought his name was Jake something. "We need to have ourselves a conversation." Maya kept her voice steady. "This is private property. You're trespassing." Jake smiled, but there was nothing friendly about it. "See, that's where you're wrong. This here land has been in our families for generations. Your grandmother, she was tolerated, but you're a different story." Another man stepped forward, this one with a thick beard and suspicious eyes. "You've been stealing our water," he accused. "That while you're using taps into the same aquifer that feeds our land." Maya knew this was nonsense. Her grandmother had legal water rights that went back decades, but these men weren't interested in legal facts. "I'm not stealing anything," Maya said firmly. "My grandmother established water rights for this property years before any of you were born." "Your grandmother knew her place," Jake replied, his voice getting harder. "She kept to herself, didn't make waves. But you're different. You come here from the city thinking you can change things, thinking you belong." Maya felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. These men were armed, and she was alone. Getting emotional wouldn't help anyone. "I do belong here," she said. "This is my land, legally purchased and owned. You have no right to be here." The third man, younger than the others with nervous energy, laughed harshly. "Legal don't mean much out here, lady. What means something is community, and you ain't part of our community." Jake took a step closer to Maya, close enough that she could smell the beer on his breath. "Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna sign over the deed to this property. We'll give you fair market value, maybe even a little extra for your trouble. Then you're gonna pack up your kids and go back where you came from." Maya's training kicked in. In the army, she had learned to assess threats and calculate options under pressure. Right now, her options were limited. 6 armed men between her and her house. No neighbors within shouting distance. Cell phone in her pocket, but would they let her reach for it? And if I refuse? Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Jake's smile disappeared entirely. Then we'll have to solve this problem ourselves. This land has ways of dealing with people who don't belong. The bearded man raised his rifle slightly, not quite pointing it at Maya but making sure she saw the movement. 24 hours, he said. That's how long you got to think about it. Come Sunday evening, we come back for your answer. Maya looked around at the 6 faces surrounding her. These weren't random troublemakers or angry teenagers. These were grown men with families and jobs in the community. Men who probably went to church on Sunday morning and considered themselves good, law-abiding citizens. But Maya also saw something else in their eyes. Fear. They were afraid of what she represented. Afraid of change. Afraid that her success might prove their prejudices wrong. Afraid that her presence might inspire other black families to move to their area. I understand, Maya said quietly, not because she was giving in, but because she needed them to leave so she could think. Jake nodded, apparently satisfied that he had made his point. Smart girl, don't make this harder than it has to be. The men walked back to their trucks, making sure to take their time, making sure Maya saw every rifle and every face. They wanted her to spend the next 24 hours thinking about what would happen if she chose wrong. As soon as the trucks disappeared down her driveway, Maya ran for the house. Her hands shook as she dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? This is Maya Richardson on Old Mill Road. 6 armed men just threatened me on my own property. They gave me 24 hours to leave or they'll handle the situation themselves. Ma'am, did they physically assault you? They pointed guns at me and threatened, but no actual physical contact occurred? Maya wanted to scream. They threatened to kill me if I don't sell my property and leave. I'll send Deputy Caldwell out to take a report. Maya almost laughed at the absurdity. Deputy Caldwell, who had ignored every previous report she filed. Deputy Caldwell, who probably went to school with half the men who just threatened her. But Maya had another phone call to make. A more important one. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she needed. Her cousin David, who lived 3 hours away in North Carolina. David, who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan with Navy SEAL Team 6. David, who had always told Maya to call him if she ever needed anything. David answered on the second ring. Maya, everything okay? Maya took a deep breath. David, I need help. I'm in serious trouble and I don't think the local police are going to do anything about it. Tell me everything. So Maya did. She told him about the months of harassment, the vandalism, the threats. She told him about 6 armed men who had just given her 24 hours to abandon everything her grandmother had built. When she finished, David was quiet for a long moment. Maya, these people are escalating. They've moved from harassment to armed intimidation. That's a line you don't cross back over. I know, but what can I do? If I call the state police, they'll just refer it back to the local sheriff. If I call the FBI, they'll say it's a local matter until someone actually gets hurt. You're not calling the FBI, David said. You're calling family. Give me 6 hours. David, what are you? Maya, you remember what Grandma Della used to say about family? Maya smiled despite everything. Family stands together. That's right. And you're about to learn that some family members have very specialized skills. After David hung up, Maya sat in her grandmother's kitchen, trying to process what had just happened. In 24 hours, those men would return expecting an answer. They expected her to be gone, scared away by their threats. Maya looked around at the kitchen where her grandmother had cooked thousands of meals, where family had gathered for holidays and celebrations, where dreams had been born and nurtured for 3 generations. She wasn't going anywhere, but she also wasn't going to face what came next alone. Maya barely slept that night. Every sound outside made her jump. Every car that passed on the distant road made her wonder if the men were coming back early. She kept her phone charged and within reach, but she wasn't sure who she would call if something happened before David arrived. Deputy Caldwell had shown up around 10 o'clock, just as Maya expected. He listened to her story with the same bored expression he always wore, took notes on a small pad and asked the same useless questions. Did any of them actually point their weapons directly at you? Did anyone make a specific threat against your life? Are you sure you didn't misunderstand their intentions? Maya answered his questions with growing frustration. Caldwell seemed more interested in finding reasons not to investigate than in protecting her safety. I'll increase patrols in this area, he promised as he left. But Maya knew it was an empty gesture. She had seen exactly one sheriff's patrol car in the 3 months she had lived here. And that was during her first week when they were probably just curious about the new resident. As dawn broke over the farm, Maya was sitting on her front porch with coffee that had gone cold hours ago. She was trying to decide whether to call her ex-husband and ask him to keep the kids for another week when she heard vehicles approaching. But these weren't the pickup trucks from the night before. These were different vehicles, and they were moving with a purpose that immediately caught Maya's attention. A black SUV led the convoy, followed by a dark blue pickup truck and a gray sedan. They moved in formation, maintaining precise distances between vehicles, approaching at a speed that was fast but controlled. Maya recognized military-style movement when she saw it. The SUV pulled up to her house first, and David climbed out of the passenger seat. Maya had seen her cousin in his dress blues at family functions, but she had never seen him in civilian tactical gear: black cargo pants, black t-shirt, equipment vest with multiple pouches. He looked like he was ready for a mission. 4 other men emerged from the other vehicles, all dressed similarly. Maya could tell immediately that these weren't regular civilians. They moved with the same controlled precision as David, scanning the area automatically, positioning themselves to cover different angles around her property. David hugged Maya briefly but kept the greeting short and professional. Maya, meet the team. We've got Alex, our communications specialist. He pointed to a tall black man with intelligent eyes who was already setting up some kind of electronic equipment. This is Tommy, demolitions and breaching. A compact white man with scarred hands nodded to Maya while checking something on a small tablet. Carlos handles reconnaissance and surveillance. A Latino man with binoculars around his neck was already studying the tree line around Maya's property. And that's Ben, our sniper and long-range specialist. The last man was lean and quiet, with eyes that seemed to notice everything. He was carrying a case that Maya suspected contained more than hunting equipment. "Gentlemen," David said to his team, "this is my cousin Maya, the woman I told you about, the one whose family is being threatened." Alex looked up from his equipment. David briefed us on the situation during the drive. 6 armed men, local law enforcement compromised, escalating threats culminating in a 24-hour ultimatum. Maya felt a surge of relief that she hadn't experienced in months. These men understood the situation immediately. No questioning whether she had misunderstood. No suggestions that it might be a simple misunderstanding between neighbors. Tommy was walking around her property, examining the vandalism that Maya had documented. "Systematic harassment campaign," he said, pointing to the repaired fence lines. "Classic intimidation tactics designed to wear down the target's resolve." Carlos returned from a quick scout of the perimeter. "Good sight lines from the main road. Multiple escape routes through the back fields. Defensible position if we set up correctly." David turned to Maya. "Here's what's going to happen. These men gave you 24 hours, which means they'll be back around sunset tonight. They expect to find you gone or ready to surrender. Instead, they're going to find something very different." "David, I don't want anyone to get hurt. Maybe I should just—" "No." Ben spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but firm. "Maya, people like this don't stop with one victory. If you give in to their threats, they'll know they can intimidate anyone who doesn't look like them or think like them. Your grandmother didn't run, and neither should you." Alex had finished setting up his communications equipment. "Maya, we've established contact with the state police and the FBI field office in Atlanta. David's military connections go pretty high up the chain. When this is over tonight, the right people will be notified and proper investigations will begin." Maya felt tears of gratitude starting to form. For the first time in months, she wasn't facing this alone. Tommy was sketching out positions on a piece of paper. "We'll establish an overwatch position in the barn. Ben, you'll have clear fields of fire from the hayloft. Alex, can you set up motion sensors along the driveway approach?" "Already working on it," Alex replied, pulling more equipment from his bag. Carlos pointed to various locations around the property. "We'll have concealed positions here, here, and here. When they arrive tonight, they'll be surrounded before they realize what's happening." David pulled Maya aside while his team continued their preparations. "Maya, I need you to understand something. These men are highly trained professionals. We've all seen combat in some of the most dangerous places in the world. But tonight isn't about combat. It's about deterrence. What do you mean? We're going to show them that you're not alone and defenseless. We're going to make it clear that threatening you has consequences they didn't anticipate. But we're not looking for a firefight. Our goal is to defuse this situation without anyone getting seriously hurt. Maya nodded, though she still felt nervous about what might happen. As the day progressed, Maya watched in amazement as David's team transformed her property. They installed motion sensors and surveillance cameras that were invisible unless you knew where to look. They established communication systems that would allow them to coordinate their movements perfectly. Ben disappeared into the barn and emerged an hour later, satisfied with whatever position he had prepared. Alex tested communication systems that would let the team talk to each other and to outside law enforcement simultaneously. Tommy and Carlos worked together to identify every possible approach to the property and every escape route the threatening men might try to use. Around 4 o'clock, Alex's equipment picked up chatter on local radio frequencies. Someone was coordinating movements for that evening. The same 6 men were planning to return, and they had discussed bringing additional weapons and more people. They're not expecting resistance, Carlos reported after listening to the intercepted communications. They think they're dealing with one scared woman who will either be gone or ready to sign over her property. David checked his watch. Sun sets in about 3 hours. Everyone knows their positions? The team confirmed their readiness with professional efficiency that reminded Maya of her own military service. These men had worked together before, probably in situations much more dangerous than this one. As evening approached, Maya felt calmer than she had in months. Whatever happened tonight, she wouldn't face it alone. Her grandmother's legacy would be protected by people who understood the importance of standing up to bullies. David handed Maya a radio headset. Stay in the house. Keep your head down. We'll handle everything else. Maya looked out her kitchen window at her grandmother's fields golden in the setting sun. Della Richardson had built something beautiful here, something worth protecting. Tonight Maya would find out if her family's legacy could survive the hatred of those who wanted to destroy it. In the distance, Maya could hear vehicles approaching. The sound of pickup truck engines getting louder. Here they come. Alex's voice crackled through the radio. Maya took a deep breath and prepared for whatever came next. The confrontation lasted exactly 12 minutes. Maya would remember that detail for the rest of her life, because she watched the clock on her grandmother's kitchen wall from the moment the pickup trucks appeared in her driveway until the moment the last man was secured in zip tie. Restraints had started just like the night before. 2 trucks, 6 men, rifles visible in the fading daylight. But this time they drove with more confidence. They expected to find Maya either gone or broken, ready to sign away her family's legacy. Jake, the leader from the hardware store, climbed out of his truck carrying a folder of papers. "Miss Richardson," he called toward the house. "Time's up. Come on out so we can finish this business." Maya watched from her kitchen window as the men spread out across her yard, just like they had the night before. They were relaxed, almost casual. They had no idea they were being watched by 5 sets of highly trained eyes. "Richardson," Jake called again, his voice getting impatient. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." That's when Alex's voice came through Maya's radio headset, calm and professional. "All units, targets are in position. Begin operation." What happened next looked like something from a movie, except it was happening in Maya's front yard. Ben's voice came through the radio first. "I have eyes on all 6 targets. Clear shots if needed, but holding position." From her kitchen window, Maya could see a red laser dot appear on Jake's chest, then disappear. Then another dot appeared on the bearded man's forehead for just a second before vanishing. Jake looked around nervously, clearly noticing something was wrong but not sure what. Carlos emerged from behind Maya's barn, moving silently until he was positioned directly behind 2 of the men. Tommy appeared from the other side of the property, cutting off their escape route to the trucks. David and Alex approached from the front, walking calmly but purposefully toward the group of armed men. "Gentlemen," David called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "You're trespassing on private property. Set down your weapons and step away from the vehicles." Jake spun around, raising his rifle toward David. "Who the hell are you?" "This ain't your business." That's when Ben's voice crackled through the radio. Target 1 has raised his weapon toward friendly. Red laser active on his forehead. Jake froze as the red dot appeared right between his eyes. He looked up toward the barn, trying to locate the sniper, but Ben was invisible from ground level. Alex held up a small device that was beeping rapidly. Jake Morrison, age 34. 2 prior arrests for assault. Tommy Morrison, age 31. Suspended driver's license and outstanding warrant for unpaid fines. Should I continue reading your background checks, or are you ready to listen? Maya realized that David's team had spent the day researching every man who had threatened her. They knew their names, their criminal histories, probably their addresses and family information. Carlos spoke from behind the group, making several men jump. Weapons on the ground, now hands visible. Tommy's voice came from the opposite direction. Anyone who reaches for a weapon will be considered a hostile threat. Maya watched 6 armed men realize they were completely surrounded by professionals who were better armed, better trained and better prepared than they were. Jake tried to maintain control of the situation. You boys don't understand what you're getting into here. This is local business. We've got connections in this county. David stepped closer and Maya could see the calm confidence in his posture. Jake, I'm going to explain something to you one time. My cousin Maya is under the protection of 5 combat veterans who have served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places you couldn't pronounce. We've dealt with actual terrorists, actual threats to American citizens. You and your friends are just scared bullies with hunting rifles. Alex held up his communication device. I currently have direct contact with FBI agent Patricia Williams in Atlanta, State Police Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison in Augusta, and the commanding officer of Fort Stewart. Would you like to speak with any of them? Maya saw the moment when Jake realized he had made a terrible miscalculation. This wasn't a helpless city woman they could intimidate. This was someone with family connections they hadn't anticipated. Now, David continued, you have 2 choices. Choice 1. You set down your weapons, accept restraint, and wait quietly for state police to arrive. You'll be charged with armed intimidation, trespassing, and probably federal civil rights violations, but nobody gets hurt. Choice 2. Ben's voice came through speakers Alex had positioned around the property. You try to fight, and you discover what happens when weekend hunters go up against professional soldiers. The psychological effect was devastating. Ben's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, making it impossible for the men to know where the sniper was positioned. Carlos zip-tied the first man's hands before he could react. Tommy disarmed the bearded man so quickly Maya barely saw the movement. Within minutes, all 6 men were secured and their weapons confiscated. Alex was already coordinating with law enforcement. State Police ETA 15 minutes. FBI field agents en route from Atlanta. Local sheriff's department has been informed but not requested. Maya walked outside for the first time in months without feeling afraid. Jake glared at her with hatred, but he was no longer a threat. He was just a man sitting in her driveway with his hands restrained, waiting for real law enforcement to arrive. Maya Richardson, David said formally, on behalf of the United States Navy and everyone who believes in equal justice, your property has been secured. The state police arrived exactly when Alex said they would, followed 20 minutes later by 2 FBI agents who had driven from Atlanta. Maya watched as Jake and his associates were loaded into patrol cars, their hunting rifles tagged as evidence. Agent Patricia Williams, a professional woman in her 40s, interviewed Maya extensively about the months of harassment. Unlike Deputy Caldwell, Agent Williams took detailed notes and asked intelligent questions about patterns of behavior and escalation. Ms. Richardson, what happened here tonight is going to send a clear message throughout this region, Agent Williams explained. Federal civil rights violations carry serious penalties. These men are looking at significant prison time. But the real change started the next morning. Maya's story spread through the county like wildfire, but not in the way she expected. Instead of making her more isolated, it seemed to give courage to other people who had been silent. The owner of the local diner, an older white woman named Helen, brought Maya a casserole and an apology. I should have spoken up before, Helen said. What those men were doing was wrong, and a lot of us knew it. We were just scared to get involved. Dr. Patricia Johnson, the only black doctor in the county, stopped by to introduce herself. Maya, I've been practicing here for 8 years, and I've dealt with some of the same people who were bothering you. What your family did last night showed everyone that this kind of behavior has consequences. Maya's neighbor Bill Henderson, the man whose cattle had mysteriously broken through her fence, came by with a repair crew to fix all the damage on Maya's property. "Maya, I owe you an apology and an explanation," he said. "Those Morrison boys threatened my family too. Said they'd burn down my barn if I didn't let my cattle loose on your land. I should have called the police instead of going along with it." Over the following weeks, Maya discovered that the Morrison brothers had been terrorizing several families in the area. Other farmers had been threatened, small business owners had been intimidated, and anyone who didn't fit their narrow definition of acceptable had been made to feel unwelcome. The FBI investigation uncovered a pattern of coordinated harassment that went back years. Jake and Tommy Morrison were charged with federal hate crimes, conspiracy, and weapons violations. Their associates received lesser but still significant charges. Maya's farm began to thrive for the first time since she moved there. Without the constant sabotage, her irrigation system worked perfectly. Her crops flourished in the rich Georgia soil. Local suppliers who had previously claimed to be out of stock suddenly had everything she needed. The county school system reached out to apologize for not addressing the harassment Zoe and Tyler had experienced. New anti-bullying policies were implemented, and Maya was invited to serve on the school board's diversity committee. David and his team stayed for a week, helping Maya install permanent security systems and teaching her defensive techniques she hoped she would never need. When they left, David hugged his cousin goodbye with obvious pride. "Grandma Della would be proud," he told Maya. "You didn't just protect your land, you protected everyone who comes after you." 6 months later, Maya's farm was profitable for the first time. She had contracts with 3 restaurants in nearby towns and a weekly booth at the county farmers market. Her organic vegetables were in demand, and she was considering expanding her operation. More importantly, Zoe and Tyler were thriving. They had friends now, children whose parents appreciated what Maya had brought to their community. They were proud of their mother's courage and their family's history. Maya established the Della Richardson Foundation, providing grants and support for minority farmers facing discrimination. David and his former teammates became advisors to the foundation, offering security consultation for farmers dealing with intimidation. The Morrison brothers were sentenced to federal prison terms. Jake received 8 years, Tommy got 6, and their associates received sentences ranging from probation to 3 years. The judge made it clear that intimidating people because of their race would not be tolerated in his courtroom, but the most meaningful change was quieter. Maya would often find small gifts on her doorstep now. Fresh bread from Helen's diner, flowers from neighbors she was still getting to know, notes from children thanking her for not giving up. Maya kept her grandmother's old rocking chair on the front porch. In the evenings, after her children finished their homework and the farm work was done, she would sit in that chair and watch the sun set over fields that were finally at peace. The land that Della Richardson had fought to own, that she had worked for over 40 years, that she had passed down to her granddaughter, was finally producing the dreams it had always held. Maya Richardson had proven that some legacies are worth fighting for, and that sometimes family means more than just the people who share your blood. It means the people who show up when you need them most.